I sat at the head of the mahogany conference table, facing people I had once called family. My wife had been buried only days earlier, and already the vultures were circling. Monica, my daughter-in-law, leaned over the table without a trace of grief and slammed a stack of legal documents in front of me. "Now that the old woman is gone," she said, smiling coldly, "you will put the company in my son's name and fend for yourself. You are done here, Richard. It is our turn now." I looked at my son Derek. He stared at his expensive shoes rather than meet my eyes. They believed a grieving 70-year-old widower was easy to defeat. They had forgotten who built the empire they were trying to steal. I did not shout. I did not argue. I folded my hands and smiled. 3 seconds later, the heavy boardroom doors opened. My attorney, Victor Lang, walked in carrying a black briefcase. Without a word, he crossed the room and dropped a certified DINA report in front of Monica. What that document revealed would destroy the scheme they had spent years building. Before I tell you how, comment where you are watching from. If you have ever stood up to an ungrateful relative, like and subscribe. This began 3 days earlier, while funeral lilies still scented my house. Diane, my wife of 45 years, was gone after a brutal fight with pancreatic cancer. I stood at the kitchen sink washing one glass, simply to keep my hands busy in the silence she had left. Then I heard expensive heels striking the hardwood floor. Monica entered in a tailored black designer suit. Her makeup was flawless. Her eyes were dry. She did not ask how I was surviving my first days without Diane. She placed a manila folder on the counter. Across the first page, in bold letters, were the words "Emergency Handover AN Succession Agreement." "What is this?" I asked. She sighed, as if speaking to a difficult child. "It is for your own good, Richard. You are 70. You just lost Diane. You are grieving, and you are in no condition to run Caldwell Logistics. Sign today and transfer executive power to Chase." Chase was my 18-year-old grandson. He had barely finished high school and spent more time photographing sports cars for social media than reading a balance sheet. Diane and I had built Caldwell Logistics from one rusty delivery truck in 1985. $100 and no investors. We ate cold sandwiches in parking lots, slept in the cab, and fought for every customer. 4 decades later, the company was worth $15 million. Now, 3 days after I buried the woman who built it beside me, Monica wanted me to hand it to a teenager so she could rule through him. "The company is fine," I said. "I am grieving. I am not incapacitated." Derek entered on cue. At 42, standing beside his wife, he looked like a boy waiting for permission to speak. He put a hand on my shoulder and produced a rehearsed expression of concern. "Dad, please listen to her. Your blood pressure has been high since Mom got sick. We are worried. Put the title into the family trust under Chase's name. Monica and I will handle daily operations. You can rest." It was a plausible lie because it sounded like love. I looked at the gold pen Monica had placed beside the documents. "I will think about it. I need to read every clause." Derek smiled with visible relief. "Of course. Just do not wait too long. The company needs steady leadership." They left together. I remained in the kitchen, watching their reflections in the dark bay window. Near the front door, Monica stopped and typed a message on her phone. She did not know the glass gave me a perfect view of her face. After pressing send, she whispered, with a triumphant smile. The old man took the bait. "Prep the chairs." I stood there, listening to the faucet drip. They thought grief had made me weak. They had forgotten something Diane knew better than anyone. A lone wolf may lose his mate, but he does not lose his teeth. Before sunrise, I drove to Caldwell Logistics, rode to the executive floor, and went straight to the archives. If Derek and Monica were planning a takeover, I wanted the foundational agreements and financial backups. I swiped my master key card. Red light. Access denied. I tried again. Same result. A voice came from near the dark break room. "Having trouble, Richard?" Bradley Jenkins, our 45-year-old chief financial officer, stepped into the corridor. He wore a custom suit, too much expensive cologne, and a smile that did not reach his eyes. "My MasterCard is blocked," I said. "Right, I should have warned you. We are updating the security system." Derek authorized a complete migration of sensitive access protocols. He mentioned you would be taking extended leave, so we thought now was the perfect time. Derek authorized it. He did. "Do not worry. We have everything under control. You should go home and rest." His eyes told me more than his words. They were locking me out of my own company and daring me to react. If I became angry, they could call my grief unstable behavior and use it as evidence that I was unfit. So I smiled. "Tell Derek I appreciate his sudden interest in data security." I walked to my office and locked the door. They thought blocking modern access had blinded me. 10 years earlier, after a corporate espionage attempt, I had commissioned an invisible backdoor into our network. A biometric lock under my desk opened a hidden compartment containing the encrypted drive and credentials for that system. I connected it to a secure laptop. Green code appeared on the screen. I was about to enter the final password when my private phone rang. The display showed Memorial Hospital. Hospitals do not call at 6:30 in the morning with good news. "Mr. Richard Caldwell?" a woman asked. "This is the emergency department. Your grandson Chase has been in a severe motorcycle accident. He is in the trauma unit. We need family here immediately." I shut the laptop, hid the drive, and ran. The war for Caldwell Logistics could wait. My grandson was bleeding. The drive was a blur of traffic lights and horns. At the hospital, I abandoned my truck near the emergency entrance and rushed inside. The trauma corridor smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. Monica paced near the waiting area, typing angrily on her phone. Derek sat hunched in a plastic chair, his face pale. "Dad," he said when he saw me. "What happened?" He took a corner too fast on the new motorcycle. He hit the guardrail. The helmet protected his head, but his left thigh was badly cut. He lost a lot of blood. Monica folded her arms. "This is a complete disaster. We were supposed to finalize the trust transfer today." I stared at her. Her son was in surgery, and she was worried about paperwork. Before I could answer, an exhausted physician came through the trauma doors. "Family of Chase Caldwell?" We gathered around him. "He is stable, and we stopped the main hemorrhage. But his hemoglobin is critically low. He needs an immediate transfusion." Monica waved a hand. "Then give him blood." The doctor frowned. "Chase is AB positive. Our blood bank is depleted after a major collision, so we need compatible family donors while more blood is brought in. We can cross-match both parents now." The world seemed to stop. AB positive. I was type O. Diane had been type O. Derek was type O. I remembered his childhood surgical records. Monica was type A. An O parent and an A parent could produce a child with type A or O blood. They could not produce an AB child because the B allele had to come from somewhere. I looked at Derek. He was not confused. He was terrified. His hands clamped around the metal rail behind him. Sweat ran down his forehead. He stared at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. When he finally looked up, he saw the realization on my face and immediately looked away. He knew. Monica began loudly demanding that the hospital obtain blood from a private medical center by helicopter, no matter the cost. Her outrage was theater, a distraction from the request that she and Derek be tested. The doctor went back through the doors to arrange transport. I said nothing. You do not confront a cornered animal before you know exactly where its exits are. Instead, I turned to Derek. "Come downstairs. Let us get coffee." The cafeteria was in the basement, lit by flickering fluorescent tubes. We sat at a plastic table with 2 cups of bitter coffee between us. I let the silence work first. Then I said, "The doctor was very clear. Chase is AB positive. Your mother and I were O. You are O. Monica is A. Explain that to me." Derek flinched. He squeezed his paper cup hard enough to bend it, then slammed it down. "You are grieving and confused, Dad. It was probably a clerical error. Hospitals make mistakes. My son is upstairs fighting for his life, and you are turning a typo into some paranoid conspiracy." His anger answered the question better than honesty would have. A genuinely confused man would have asked the same question I had. Derek attacked me because he already knew the answer. I studied him and felt more sadness than anger. Diane and I had spent fortunes on his education and opportunities, hoping comfort would produce confidence. Instead, Derek had learned to follow the strongest person in the room, and that person was Monica. "You are probably right," I said softly. "It must be a typographical error. What other explanation could there be?" He swallowed and stared into his coffee. I left him there and took the elevator back to the trauma floor. When the doors opened, I did not immediately enter the waiting room. I stopped behind a concrete pillar near the nurse's station. Down the corridor, Monica stood near a window, whispering furiously into her phone. I could not hear every word, but I heard enough. "He noticed the blood type," she hissed. "We may have a problem." That settled it. I no longer needed suspicion. I needed proof. The helicopter delivered blood. The transfusion worked, and Chase went home that afternoon on crutches. I played the relieved grandfather, hugged Derek, and promised to check on them later. That evening I bought 2 containers of chicken noodle soup and transferred them into glass dishes so they looked homemade. Into my overcoat, I placed latex gloves, sterile evidence bags, and a pair of tweezers. Derek answered the door, looking exhausted. "Dad, you did not have to come. I could not sleep. I brought dinner." Inside, Monica sat at the marble kitchen island drinking red wine and complaining about the cost of the emergency helicopter. "Health has no price," I said. "We are lucky Chase is upstairs." While Derek heated the soup, I excused myself to wash my hands and check on Chase. The boy was asleep, his injured leg elevated on pillows and noise-canceling headphones covering his ears. I entered his bathroom, put on gloves, and opened the medicine cabinet. His blue electric toothbrush sat in a ceramic holder, its bristles still damp. I sealed it in a sterile bag. In the mudroom, I found Derek's gray gym jacket in his usual hamper. 2 hairs with roots were caught inside the collar. I lifted them with tweezers, sealed them in a second sterile bag, and returned to the kitchen. 10 minutes later, I was smiling, thanking them for the soup conversation, and leaving with the destruction of their lie in my coat pocket. Instead of going home, I drove to a private genetics lab 2 towns away. After 2 in the morning, a technician accepted the anonymous samples and promised certified results within 48 hours. I paid $5,000 for priority handling. As I returned to my truck, my phone vibrated. It was an automated alert from the hidden Caldwell Logistics back door. Someone was attempting to authorize an unapproved wire transfer of $4.5 million using my digital signature. I drove straight home. In my study, I closed the blinds, locked the door, and logged into the ghost system I had built a decade earlier. Cascading green code filled the monitor. Within minutes, I had bypassed every surface-level restriction Bradley had created. The active request originated from the Executive Finance Suite. Bradley Jenkins. Bradley was trying to send $4.5 million using spoofed credentials that mimicked mine. I quietly quarantined the transaction so he could neither complete it nor erase the attempt. Then I followed the money. The trail led through 4 Delaware shell companies: Global Freight Solutions, Apex Logistics Consulting, Horizon Management Partners, and Zenith Supply Chain Associates. They billed us for consulting, software, and freight services that never existed, always below automatic review thresholds. I downloaded every ledger, routing number, invoice, login record, and authorization trace to my encrypted drive. Then I found the real horror. The money was not coming from operating revenue. It was not coming from expansion reserves. Bradley and Monica had been draining the employee pension fund. Over 8 months, they had stolen $4.5 million from truck drivers, warehouse supervisors, dispatchers, and managers who had spent their lives building my company. The first major withdrawal had occurred during the same week. Diane received her terminal diagnosis. While I held Diane's hand in oncology and hospice rooms, Monica and Bradley had used my grief to rob the people who trusted me. I opened the emergency succession agreement again and read the final clauses carefully. There it was. A broad indemnification provision absolved the incoming board of prior financial discrepancies. Another clause required my signature as sole approving authority for all pre-transfer financial activity just before the year-end audit. The takeover was not merely about power. It was a frame. The audit began in less than 3 weeks. If I signed, the forged records carrying my credentials would make me appear to have approved the missing pension money. They were not only trying to steal my company, they were preparing to leave me holding the criminal evidence. I stayed silent for 2 days. Derek called repeatedly. Monica sent increasingly impatient messages. Bradley behaved at the office as if nothing had happened. I ignored them all. Evidence first, anger later. On the 3rd morning, the genetics laboratory called. Mr. Caldwell, the expedited analysis is complete. The certified report is ready for pickup. I drove there immediately. The receptionist gave me a sealed envelope. I carried it to my truck, locked the doors, and sat for a long time with the engine idling. For 18 years, I had imagined Chase carrying our name. The envelope on the passenger seat could erase that future with one sentence. I opened it. The conclusion was printed in bold. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. Derek was excluded as Chase's biological father. There was no ambiguity. The boy I had loved as my grandson carried no paternal connection to my son, and therefore no Caldwell blood through him. For a minute, grief crushed me. I mourned the grandson I thought I had. I mourned the legacy Diane believed would continue. I was grateful she had not lived to see this betrayal. Then, my grief hardened into clarity. If Derek was not the father, who was? If Monica had risked an affair, I suspected it was with someone useful, someone who understood Caldwell's finances, had access, and could move millions. Someone like Bradley Jenkins. That afternoon, I hired Robert Sanchez, a former federal white-collar investigator turned private detective. I placed a blank signed check on his metal desk. I want Monica's life open from end to end, I said. Where she goes, what she buys, who she meets, what she has hidden. Start with Bradley Jenkins. Robert looked at the check, then at me. How deep? Until there is nowhere left to dig. For the next 3 days, I became an actor in my own life. For 3 days, I attended meetings, nodded to Bradley, and told Derek in a weary voice that I was still considering the succession papers. They thought they were watching me fade. In reality, I was standing in the center of a burning room and quietly locking every exit. Robert contacted me on the 3rd evening and told me to meet him at a 24-hour diner on the edge of the industrial district. He sat in a rear booth with a thick dossier on the table. You were right about Bradley, he said. They were not careful because they never believed anyone would look backward far enough. The first photograph showed Monica and Bradley at a private restaurant 3 weeks earlier, sitting close, his hand over hers. Robert turned the page. They did not first meet at Caldwell Logistics 5 years ago, as they claimed. They met in business school 20 years ago. They lived together for 2 years. They were college sweethearts. The file contained hotel records, travel records, private charges, and photographs, showing that their relationship had continued throughout Monica's marriage to Derek. And Chase? I asked. Robert's face hardened. I obtained a discrete biological sample from Bradley and had it compared to the profile from Chase. Bradley Jenkins is Chase's biological father. Monica was already carrying his child before she married your son. A 19-year strategy emerged. Monica married Derek to enter the Caldwell family while keeping Bradley beside her, then presented their son as the future Caldwell heir. But Robert had one more document. He slid a printed email across the table. This came from an old deleted archive. It was sent by Derek to Monica 10 years ago. I read it. Derek wrote that doctors had confirmed he was permanently sterile after a childhood infection. He warned Monica that Diane might invoke the bloodline trust if she learned he could never produce a biological heir. Then came the line that ended my faith in him: my father must never know. Chase is the only thing keeping my inheritance secure. Derek had known for 10 years. He was not a deceived husband trapped by Monica. He was an accomplice. He had known Chase was not his biological son and had watched Diane and me plan around a false heir because the lie protected his inheritance. He had sold his mother's trust and his father's love for access to $15 million. I folded the email and placed it back into the dossier. Thank you, Robert. What will you do now? I stood. I am going home. Then I am going to invite my son and his wife over and give them exactly what they want. Robert raised an eyebrow. The company? No, I said. Enough rope. That night I called Derek. He answered almost immediately. Dad, are you all right? We have been trying to reach you. I let my voice shake. I am tired, son. The grief is winning. Come over with Monica. I have decided what to do about the succession agreement. I staged my study before they arrived. I dimmed the lights, placed a photograph of Diane prominently on the desk, loosened my collar, ruffled my hair, and practiced the posture of a man collapsing under sorrow. When the bell rang, I walked slowly to the door. Derek embraced me awkwardly. Monica entered wearing a sympathetic expression that could not hide the anticipation in her eyes. In the study, I sat behind the desk and stared at Diane's photograph until a real tear came. That part required no acting. You were right, I whispered. I cannot do this anymore. The company, the pressure, this empty house. Without Diane, it is too much. Monica leaned forward, almost glowing. Richard, you have earned your rest. Let us carry the burden. Derek patted my hand. We will protect everything you and Mom built. I nearly laughed at the obscenity of those words, but I kept my face broken. Finalize the papers, I said. Put the title into the family trust under Chase. You and Monica can run the company. I want it done by the end of the week. Monica could barely suppress her smile. Friday morning. We will execute the transfer in front of the board. Fine. They stayed 20 minutes, speaking gently about how little I would need to worry after I surrendered control. When they finally left, I watched their SUV disappear down the street. Then I straightened my back. The tremor vanished from my hands. I returned to my study and called Victor Lang. Victor had been my corporate attorney for decades, a legal strategist who treated litigation the way a surgeon treated a tumor. Cancel the rest of your week, I told him. I need termination papers, trust amendments, financial preservation orders, and a full disinheritance package. Targets are Derek, Monica, and Bradley Jenkins. There was a short silence. What did they do? They stole $4.5 million from the employee pension fund, forged my authorization, tried to frame me through an emergency succession agreement, and violated Diane's bloodline trust through a 19-year paternity fraud. Victor's voice became almost cheerful, in the way only a dangerous lawyer's voice can. When do they intend to sign? Friday morning. Then let them. No, I said. Let them think I will. Victor understood immediately. I will contact Harrison. Over the next 48 hours, Special Agent Harrison's federal team traced the shell companies, verified the forged signatures, mapped the offshore transfers, and obtained orders freezing the accounts. Meanwhile, believing they had won, Monica and Bradley abandoned caution. Bradley fired loyal Vice President Thomas Sterling, the HR director, and the chief logistics coordinator, replacing them with obedient people unlikely to question transactions. Derek signed the termination approvals without protest. When Thomas called me, furious and confused, I told him, take the severance. Do not fight them. Go home, rest, and be ready to return Monday. He trusted me. On Thursday, I walked through headquarters with slumped shoulders, playing the departing founder. When I reached my corner office, I found two interior designers measuring the walls. Monica stood in the middle of the room, choosing furniture. The mahogany makes it feel old, she told them. Paint everything white. Replace the desk. That desk was where Diane and I had celebrated our first $1 million freight contract with cheap champagne in paper cups. Monica glanced at me. Do not worry, Richard. We will box your personal things. I nodded, very thoughtful. Then I walked away. By Thursday night, Harrison had the offshore accounts frozen and the records preserved. Victor had the Dina report, Robert's investigation, Derek's email, and the trust documents. The trap was complete. Friday morning, I chose a charcoal bespoke suit, white shirt, platinum cufflinks, and crimson tie. The grieving old man costume was finished. I dressed as the founder again. Before leaving, I touched Diane's pearl necklace on the nightstand. This is for you, I whispered. At 7 o'clock, I placed the certified Dina report inside my jacket and drove toward headquarters. Today was not a day of mourning. It was a day of reckoning. Employees stared when I entered the lobby upright and composed. I crossed the marble floor and took the private elevator without slowing. The boardroom doors were closed when I reached the top floor. I did not knock. Monica had packed the boardroom. She occupied my old chair at the head of the table, Derek pale on her right, Bradley smiling on her left, and Chase nearby with his phone. Bradley's new executives filled the remaining seats. The rest of the table was filled with the compliant executives Bradley had installed after firing my loyal staff. One chair remained empty at the far end. Mine, apparently. I walked to it and sat down. The room fell silent. Monica gestured to an assistant, who pushed a thick folder down the polished table. It stopped in front of me, with an expensive gold pen resting on top. This is the final emergency handover and succession agreement, she said. Her fake sympathy was gone. The new board has approved the transition. All that remains is your signature. I looked at the pages that would supposedly transfer authority to Chase's trust, while validating the financial crimes committed under my name. Then Monica leaned back in my chair and gave me the same cold smile I had seen in my kitchen. Now that the old woman is gone, she said, you will put the company in my son's name and fend for yourself. You are done here, Richard. It is our turn now. A few of the new executives shifted uneasily, but none objected. Bradley adjusted his tie and smirked. Chase finally looked up, confused by the cruelty in his mother's voice. I picked up the gold pen. Then I looked at Derek. I gave my son one last chance without saying a word. He knew the paternity lie, the fraud, and the false succession. I gave him one last silent chance to find enough courage to stop it. For 1 second, hesitation crossed his face. Then he looked down at his shoes. That was his final choice. I opened my fingers. The pen hit the table with a hard metallic clatter. No, I said. Before Monica could answer, the boardroom doors swung open. Victor Lang entered, followed by 2 federal agents in dark jackets. Every confident face in the room changed. Victor crossed to the table, opened his briefcase, and dropped a sealed document in front of Monica. I represent Richard Caldwell in all matters concerning the Diane Caldwell Trust and the corporate succession of Caldwell Logistics, he said. The document before you is a certified independent genetic analysis. Monica froze. Victor continued before anyone could interrupt. The probability that Derek Caldwell is the biological father of Chase is 0%. Derek is definitively excluded as Chase's biological father. The words seemed to strike the room physically. Chase's phone slipped from his hand. He stared at Monica, his face turning white. Mom? She did not answer him. Bradley's smile vanished. His eyes moved immediately to the federal agents. He began pushing his chair backward. One agent placed a hand on his shoulder and forced him back down. Stay seated. Victor opened a second folder. The Diane Caldwell Trust transfers controlling family assets only to verified biological descendants, Victor said. Because Chase was falsely presented as one, this succession is void. Neither he nor Monica has a valid claim to control Caldwell Logistics. Monica finally found her voice. This is insane. A private test means nothing. We can challenge it. We can get another laboratory. Richard is confused. He has been unstable since Diane died. I said nothing. Victor placed additional certified documents beside the first. You are welcome to challenge the result. We have independent chain of custody confirmation, a second comparison identifying Bradley Jenkins as Chase's biological father, and nearly 2 decades of corroborating records. Chase turned toward Bradley. The shock on the boy's face was difficult to watch, but the truth could no longer be hidden to protect anyone's comfort. Him? Chase whispered. Bradley stared straight ahead. Derek suddenly stood. How could you do this to me, Monica? He shouted. You made me raise another man's son. You lied to all of us. It was a desperate performance, and a poor one. I opened my briefcase and removed the email Robert had recovered. I threw it across the table. Do not play the victim. The paper landed in front of Derek. He recognized it immediately. 10 years ago, you admitted you were sterile, I told Derek. You warned Monica that your mother could invoke the bloodline clause, then wrote that Chase was the only thing keeping your inheritance secure. Derek's face collapsed. Victor read the essential lines aloud for the board. There was no denial because there could be none. Derek dropped back into his chair. Dad, please, I was scared. Monica said Mom would leave me with nothing. She said we had no choice. Monica whipped toward him. Do not put this on me. You knew exactly what you were doing. You enjoyed the house, the cars, the salary, every luxury your father paid for. You used me. You let yourself be used because you were terrified of earning your own life. Then Monica turned on Bradley. You promised me the digital records were clean. You said he would never trace the transfers. Bradley snapped back. You were the one who accelerated everything while Diane was dying. You were the one who wanted the pension money moved before the audit. That single sentence erased any remaining doubt for the room. The alliance that had survived almost 20 years disintegrated in less than a minute. They shouted over each other, exposing details we had not even needed to reveal. I watched without satisfaction, only certainty. They thought corporate war meant suits, forged credentials, and manipulated signatures. Diane and I had survived strikes, predatory competitors, blizzards, and years when one failed contract could end us. They mistook comfort for strength and age for weakness. One of the federal agents stepped forward. Monica Caldwell. Bradley Jenkins. You are under arrest in connection with federal wire fraud and the embezzlement of $4.5 million from the Caldwell Logistics Employee Pension Fund. He began reading their rights as the second agent produced handcuffs. Monica exploded. You cannot do this to me. She screamed as the agent secured her wrists. I gave this family 20 years. I managed your useless son. I gave you a grandson. I deserve part of this company. You owe me. No, I said quietly. You gave us a lie and sent us the bill. She continued shouting as the agents led her toward the doors. Bradley did not resist. The arrogance had drained out of him. He understood exactly what frozen offshore accounts, preserved server logs, forged credentials, and federal warrants meant. The doors closed behind them. The new board members began gathering their belongings. No one needed to tell them their brief reign was over. They left quickly and silently. Only Derek, Chase, Victor, and I remained. I removed one final document from my briefcase and walked toward my son. Derek looked up with red eyes. I dropped the paper into his lap. You have 24 hours to leave the house. He read the heading. Eviction notice. Dad. The property belongs to me. Your employment at Caldwell Logistics is terminated immediately. Your salary, title, benefits, corporate cards, vehicles, and executive access are revoked. Victor has also completed the amendments permitted under the trust. You are disinherited from my personal estate. His mouth trembled. Where am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to live? For the first time, I saw how completely we had failed him by protecting him from consequences for too long. You are 42, Derek. Diane and I gave you education, money, housing, connections, and every opportunity. 10 years ago, you chose deception rather than independence. Now you finally take responsibility for yourself. He began to cry again. Please do not cut me off completely. I am still your son. Biology made you my son. Loyalty was your choice. You chose money over your mother, your father, your company, and your own dignity. Do not contact me again. He folded over in the chair. Sobbing, I turned to Chase. Chase sat frozen. In one morning he had learned Derek was not his biological father, Bradley was. His mother had lied for years, and the fortune he expected was never legally his. I could not punish him for being born, but I could not pretend nothing had changed. Chase, I said, softer now. Look at me. He did. You are not responsible for what Monica, Bradley, or Derek did. You did not design this deception. But the truth changes your legal place in the Caldwell Trust. You are not a Caldwell bloodline heir, and you will not inherit this company. A tear ran down his cheek. I will pay your college tuition and basic living expenses for 1 year. During those 12 months, get a job, learn to budget, and build your own life. After that, you support yourself. He nodded slowly. I understand, sir. Good, use the year well. None of us gets to choose the truth we are born into. We do choose what we become after learning it. He picked up his backpack and left. Derek followed a few minutes later, carrying the eviction notice like a man holding the ashes of his former life. When the doors finally closed, the boardroom became silent again. Victor stood beside me. It is done, he said. I looked at the empty chair where Monica had sat. No. The cancer is removed. Now we rebuild. 6 months later, I sat in federal court as Monica and Bradley faced judgment. The evidence included forged authorizations, shell companies, offshore transfers, pension theft, conspiracy records, and their own admissions. Both received 15-year federal prison sentences. Monica stood without the designer armor she once wore. Bradley looked hollow. They were led away in restraints from the fortune they had spent years trying to steal. Derek's punishment was different. I asked Robert once to confirm Derek had left my property. He now lived in a small apartment and worked an entry-level job at a home improvement store, learning for the first time what rent, groceries, and an hourly wage meant. I did not celebrate his hardship. I simply refused to rescue him from it. My attention belonged to the people he and Monica had endangered. My first business act was to bring Thomas Sterling and the other fired leaders back with apologies, restored positions, and compensation. Victor and Harrison's team traced the frozen offshore money and recovered the full $5 million. Every dollar went back into the employee pension fund. I personally verified the transfers. Then I called a company-wide meeting. Hundreds of drivers, warehouse workers, dispatchers, managers, and staff gathered inside our largest distribution facility. I stood on a temporary platform without a teleprompter. People in leadership violated your trust, I told them. The stolen pension money has been recovered in full. No employee will lose a cent. Those responsible are gone, and our controls are being rebuilt. The applause that followed did not feel like victory. It felt like forgiveness I had not been sure I deserved. Caldwell Logistics stabilized. Loyal managers returned. Independent audit controls were added, and pension assets required layered approval. The secret backdoor that had saved us was replaced by a documented emergency governance system. A healthy company could not depend on one old man's hidden key. The deeper question remained: what should happen to the empire after me? Diane and I had believed legacy meant bloodline succession. Her clause saved the company from Monica, but my biological son had betrayed us while unrelated employees stayed loyal. Blood alone was not loyalty. So I changed the meaning of legacy. On a clear Tuesday, Victor joined me on the roof of Caldwell Logistics. The city and our truck routes spread below. He placed a leather portfolio on a glass table. Inside were the final documents for a new trust structure. I signed the first set. I transferred half my personal wealth and long-term corporate interest to the Diane Caldwell Scholarship Fund, covering university tuition and living support for talented students who lacked money. Diane's name would stand for opportunity. I signed the second set. The remaining economic benefit would transition into employee ownership, rewarding drivers, warehouse staff, dispatchers, supervisors, and loyal executives who had actually built the company. No entitled heir would simply wake up rich because of a surname. Victor closed the portfolio. Diane would approve, he said. I looked across the skyline. She would ask why it took me so long. For the first time since the funeral, Diane's memory felt less like a wound and more like a steady hand at my back. I had believed legacy was handed down through blood. Now I knew it was what remained in others, because you had lived with purpose. Family was loyalty when loyalty was expensive, the person who stayed before success, the employee who protected others, the one who told the truth when lying paid better. A lone wolf can lose his mate. He can lose the future he imagined. But he does not have to lose himself. I had lost Diane, the son I thought I knew, and the grandson I imagined carrying my blood. But the company was becoming something able to outlive my mistakes, and that was a better legacy than a surname. That evening I opened a box of old photographs. Near the bottom was a picture of our daughter as a child sitting on her father's shoulders during a winter trip. On the back, in Diane's handwriting, was a short note about what a father leaves behind. Not the money, not the victories, not the battles people remember. What remains is the courage a child borrows when afraid, the kindness she remembers when anger is easier, and the voice telling her she can stand again. I read the words several times. It reminded me of a song Diane hummed about a daughter on her father's shoulders, feeling the world was safe. Years passed, his strength faded, and snow covered old footprints. Yet what he gave her survived him. His real inheritance was not gold. She carried his courage into battles, his kindness into dark seasons, and the knowledge that love can guide someone long after its giver is gone. The daughter in that song did not define herself by property or status. When the world asked who she was, her answer came from character. I am my father's daughter. Not because she owned what he owned, because she carried forward what was best in him. I set the photograph beside Diane's chair and finally understood why that old lyric had always moved her. We spend years measuring companies, homes, accounts, and estates. Then loss makes those measurements feel small. Diane and I had turned one rusty truck and $100 into $15 million. We once thought that was our greatest achievement. We were wrong. The money nearly destroyed the family we tried to protect. The part worth saving was never the number. What mattered was the discipline that kept us driving through storms, the loyalty that held us together when broke, the dignity of work, and the instinct to protect those who trusted us. Those were the things I wanted attached to Diane's name. Those were the things I wanted Caldwell Logistics to carry after I was gone. Outside, the house was quiet. For months, that silence had sounded like absence. That night, it sounded different. Peaceful. I turned off the lamp and looked once more at Diane's photograph. We fixed it, I said. Then I walked upstairs without looking back.